Elevink's Monthly Connect. These sessions were created to spark action and connect Elevink's ecosystem. The topic of today's episode is owning your voice for success. For today's session, we're honored to welcome an expert in this topic, Oscar Garcia from Aspida Consulting. Welcome, Oscar. It's an honor to welcome you in this space. And before we get started, I wanted to say thank you. Gracias for your support and everything that you have offered, not only to myself before Elevink was actually launched and when I contacted you with the idea, but all the support, your presence, and your dedication and devotion to helping our Elevinkers as they go through their cohort. So I just wanted to say that you are an important aspect of our ecosystem, and the friendship and the relationship that we've been able to nurture and strengthen has been amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm not going to introduce yourself because I want you to be the one that introduces yourself to our audience. So tell us about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yes, no, well, thank you again, Claudia, for having me here. And, the comment you made about when you came to me with the idea, in a way, I almost feel like como que si soy un padrino of Elevink, you know?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. You're doing a fabulous job and your whole team. But so a little bit about background about myself. So I refer to myself as the Chief Empowerment Officer of Aspida Consulting. And if you take the acronym, it's CEO. And I deliberately chose the title because, first of all, listen, there's like a zillion CEOs out there. Just go onto LinkedIn and Google, and there's a lot of CEOs. But what I really view my role is to help other people attract opportunities to them. In other words, I empower others so opportunities come to them. And with Aspida Consulting, we've been around now for about 7 years. We provide culturally relevant professional development training, and then also consulting work in the area of workforce development. Started like you started Elevink with just an idea. Actually, I started with a desire. I really didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. And I used to be this perfectionist, and I let go of that. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to get on the road, y a ver a dónde me lleva. And today I am very blessed that I've trained thousands and thousands of professionals across 5 continents. In fact, actually, God willing, in about a month, I'm actually going to be traveling to Kazakhstan. I don't even know where the heck that country is, okay, in Central Asia, and speak to an audience of 10,000 professionals out there.
Wow, look at that. Congratulations. I'm so glad that you're following your passion, that you get to do what you were born to do, and that you're impacting professionals to find their voice and to find themselves, right? Because I think that when we are able to connect to our essence and really follow, what drives our soul, it's when we can be successful. So I know that you are very close to, helping others in regards to that. So tell us about personal experiences that help you realize that owning your voice and that your narrative is one of the most authentic ways to pursue our goals. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my natural personality is an introvert. And I think you've heard me mention this before. I mean, even my mom, as I was a kid and as an adult, would always say to people, Oscar's just like his tío Roberto, very reserved, very shy. And I grew up with that label, plus also being a first generation professional. English is my second language. All the other barriers, right, that we as an immigrant or as a minority professional, we have to overcome. And but here's the thing is that when I started off working in the corporate world, I would look at my colleagues, other professionals, extroverts, and I would be like, oh my gosh, why can't I come up off the cuff with that idea, or just be able, if I'm called upon, to be able to elaborate for 5-10 minutes, and so forth. And so again, I had that desire to change. And what I ended up doing is embarking in my own personal journey of personal growth, to change and learn, read books read books. And back then it was cassettes, CDs, and so forth. And and it's been a process. It really hasn't been anything like that, just like life shattering. It's just, for me, again, it's just been this process of wanting to grow and get out of my comfort zone. Now, of course, I mean, I've experienced situations, whether it was like about 16 years ago, my ex-mother-in-law invited my ex-wife and I to go to a school board meeting just to be a fly on the wall, because the local school district was looking at closing one of the elementary schools that was about 90% Latino students. And I went to that school board meeting totally reluctant, okay? And I saw 5 moms, Spanish-speaking moms, didn't speak English, waiting their turn to say something to the school board. They didn't understand the process. They were scared. They had no translation, and it brought back memories of when I was a little kid in elementary school and how the school district didn't have translators. I was the translator at parent-teacher conferences. And like we say in Spanish, me encabroné. I got pissed off because I'm like, wait a minute, I put on my business hat and I look and I said, if your clientele needs have changed, which they have for the school district, and you are not addressing the needs, if it was a business, you go out of business. But it's a school district, that doesn't happen, right? And so with the help of family and friends, we started rallying parents to go to school board meetings and advocate whether or not they wanted the school open or closed. And that also was, a very pivotal time where it was really helping other people, parents in this case, own their voice and share their thoughts.
Thank you for sharing that. That reminds me, when I was living in Pasadena, California, the same thing. I helped a school, but I contacted Washington, D.C. because I wanted to make sure that they understood that the population that they were going to be impacted were hardworking individuals that were not going to be able to have their children stay after school so that they could work. And, coming from Mexico, and sometimes our government's not necessarily reacting as fast, I think I called, the Washington representative office on a Friday, and they called me back on a Sunday afternoon. My husband was on the phone, and they're like, they're calling you from Washington. I'm like, oh yes, I left a message on a Sunday afternoon, because they wanted to understand the magnitude. They wanted to understand how many children, who was the population. And it was just about getting all the parents informed and empowered to be able to not just take the information and walk away with the concern and start to look for something else, but instead to own their voice and ask for either additional time. What I was able to get for them was an extension. So instead of them closing at the end of the school year in May or June, they kept it open for another 6 months, and then they were able to allocate other schools, and they got more benefits out of it. Not the ideal outcome, but again, it's the importance of of just getting together. And I think there's still a recording somewhere of me speaking at the school district. Yes, one of those things that I definitely wasn't prepared for, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do to help others, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about personal brand, because we know that for Elevink, you've done the class on personal branding, but what role does personal brand has in the whole idea of owning your voice?
Yeah, it's one of the foundations, Claudia. Creating our personal brand, our professional brand. For me, it's just branding. I don't care if it's personal, you call it personal or professional, it's branding. But it is one of the foundations to owning our voice, because see, here's the thing. The way I describe personal branding is there are 4 main components. There is the why do you do what you do? And the second is your vision. Where are you going? What do you want to accomplish, later on down the road? And can you tell that vision, or quote unquote sell that vision? Also your values, right? In terms of what do you stand for, your core values, and then also your presence, right? Or your image, whether it's through Zoom over the last couple of years online, whether it's on social media, whether it's face-to-face, what is that impression that you want people to have of you. And so again, that branding is a foundation. Once you have the answer to those questions, then it guides you in terms of what is it that you want to speak up about. Because I mean, one of the things I believe, listen, in environmental sustainability and taking care of our planet, but that's not my brand. So guess what? I'm not even gonna like your, Happy Earth Day post on social media. I'm not even gonna put a thumbs up. No, that's not me. All right. Also, when you know and you have again your brand established, you can then have that courage and that knowledge to really speak up more in depth on a topic or et cetera and so forth on a point with conviction. And, regardless of whether people agree with you or not, so again, it's very, very important, foundational.
Thank you for that. And I think that that may touch upon the next question that we have. So based on your broad experience, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make that can be improved as they're working either on their personal, professional brand or owning their voice?
Oh my gosh. There's one that just comes to mind right off the top of my head is el qué dirá la gente. What will people say? I used to give my mother a hard time, and because she would say, Oscar, ¿qué va a decir la gente? Oscar, ¿qué va a decir la gente? I remember one time saying to my mom, again, I was just giving her a hard time. I was being a bad son. I admit it, okay? And I said, Mom, can you give me the name of esta gente? So that way, when I see them out on the street or, hey, they come over the house, I'll be like, I'm going to be in my best behavior, Mom, okay? I will. And she's like, ay, Oscar, nadie puede contigo. And we go up right with this, what people say. And so here's the thing, I'm going to tell you something that, again, it was just eye-opening to me, that my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the doctor gave her 6 months to live. She only lived 2 months after that. And when I translated for my mom this horrific news, I can tell you, my mom didn't care if her sister spoke to her, if I spoke to her, or whoever. She didn't care lo que le dijo la vecina or not, the neighbor or whatever. You just put things into perspective. The other thing too, I've been through some personal stuff. Okay, divorce, my daughter attempted suicide, a couple times, all these horrific things. Can I tell you something? Not once did a coworker or my boss ever say, hey, Oscar, here's $100 to help you pay for your bills. I don't expect them to. So, me vale lo que diga la gente. I love and respect everyone, but at the end of the day, we all have our own problems and we're going to focus on our needs. That's just the way life is. Number 2 is, the other thing is el aguante. Putting up with things. And typically we hear that in a relationship, but I'm going to tell you something. From a Latino culture, there is this attitude that comes way back from La Conquista and on. It's called what I call the hacendado mentality, where we, the laborers work for the owner of the hacienda. Just are so grateful that you have a job and that you're able to provide some food for your family, et cetera, and so forth. And we take this attitude into, even as a professional, as a white collar professional. We are grateful. What did my dad say? Ay, mijo, why do you change jobs so much? You should be grateful that you have a job. I can go on and on, but I'm just going to leave you with those 2 things.
Well, thank you for sharing both, right? I grew up with a mother that used to tell me, a mí no importa lo que diga la gente porque ellos no pagan nuestras cuentas, right? So she was the opposite of let's do what we need to do. Let's not worry about what everybody else. But I recently was able to, I read books sometimes and then I listen to them in audiobooks. And I don't know if have you had the chance to read or listen to the 4 Agreements, Los 4 Acuerdos de Don Miguel Ruiz? And
no, I haven't.
Okay, so it's all around a Toltec practice, and it's just 4 things, right? But one of them is don't take things personal, And it talks about how when we listen to others, they're projecting their own, their own background, their own misbeliefs, their own inhibitions. They're projecting us into what we share with them. And then the other one is to never assume. So don't assume anything around other people, because they each have their own issues that they're going through, right? So when we assume something, again, we're looking at that situation from our own lens, and it's based on our beliefs and our background and our experiences, but it may not have anything to do. So it just talks about 4 things, but how if you carry out your life following those 4 agreements, so you will be able to live a life that is less critical and more focused on each one of us and our journey, instead of focusing on the rest. So thank you for sharing that. So on the other hand, where we like to end the podcast is with 3 to 5 things that people can apply immediately. Our audience who's listening to the podcast, that they can take right away, and if they wanted to start owning their own voice, but they were afraid to, they wouldn't know how to start. What are those 3 to 5 things that you would recommend people start doing to start impacting themselves immediately?
Yeah. So again, I believe that any change, it's a process. It's really hard. There's just a small percentage of people that can just really just change on a dime. From the majority of us, we have to take some baby steps. And again, for me, it's taken me 25 plus years. Okay. But one of the things that I recommend people to do is, as far as a baby step, is let's say, since again we're still mostly virtual, one of the things is you have to build this courage muscle, because it takes courage to own your voice, like I mentioned earlier. And so one way on the virtual world is when you're on a Zoom call or something, turn your camera on. Now, some people be like, but wait a minute. Listen, I'm not talking to you if you have some technical issues, if you, whatever you have, your child, your dog, whatever that's doing, that's not what I'm not talking to you. Who I'm talking to is if for the last 24 months, you go back in 90% of the time you have your camera off, I think there's an issue. It's like my dad. My dad was an alcoholic, and he said, I only drank once, Oscar, but the thing is he never stopped drinking. So that's one. Why do I say turn the camera on? Because this is the way we can build that relationship. Plus, it also, if you are feeling uncomfortable, it's a little step to just turn it on. I didn't even say ask a question. Keep yourself on mute. Number 2, okay, is go back and identify, make a list of the values that you have. Who knows, maybe it'll be a list of 10, 15, 20 things. Once you come up with that long list, go back and circle the top 3, maybe max 5 values that are core to you. In my case, it's the 3 are help others dream bigger, inspire others, and serve others, which is why I agreed to be on the podcast, because from a business standpoint, I'm losing money being on this podcast. But because my core value is to help others and inspire, I'm here to share part of my story. And see, many of us don't even think about our values. Ya andamos ahí como locos, doing this, doing that, doing whatever. Or it also pushes me to get out of my comfort zone, because I'm okay, Oscar, if you really want to help other people, step it up, and you got to get out of your comfort zone. All right. And then the third thing too, to do is the motivation versus that purpose. Motivation is like putting fuel in your car. It runs out. I get tired, I get burnt down and all that, talking and so forth. But when you have identified your purpose, and you kind of talked about this early on in our conversation, we said, hey, Oscar, it's great that you identified, what you're passionate, what your purpose is. But when you identify, then again, it helps you just keep pushing, keep moving along. Claudia, my gosh, you came up with Elevink totally bootstrapping it yourself. The time, you could be spending more time with your husband, with your kids, or maybe just doing some self-care. But instead, you're taking that time, energy, and money to giving it back to others because you have a purpose that's more than just you. So those are three things that I encourage people to do to help you own your voice and have the courage to use it.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because I just want to reinforce that sometimes it's not easy. I'm also an introvert and I've taken the personality test several times and people don't visualize me as someone who is introvert, but when we are introverts, it takes almost double the effort to be able to speak up in a meeting or to be able to feel comfortable. And sometimes like I force myself to be one of the first ones to speak so that I can start, hearing my own voice. And so I just wanted to share with the audience that if you're having self-doubts, we have to stretch out of our comfort zone. We have to put our own goals in perspective, and sometimes it's something as simple as it may seem to others as speaking up during a meeting and feeling comfortable with it. So I can definitely relate to that, and I've been able to improve. I'm not going to say master it, but improve by putting myself out there consciously, deliberately, intentionally, because it doesn't come easy. So thank you for reinforcing that. So tell us a little bit your closing remarks, and also where can people find you? If somebody that is listening to this says, wow, what Oscar said really resonated, I want to have him as my coach, where can they contact you? What are your social media, and any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience?
Sure. No, thank you, Claudia. So first of all, I'm very active when it comes to social media. The number one platform that I'm active on, just also given the type of work that I do, is LinkedIn. So look me up, Oscar Garcia, Aspida Consulting on LinkedIn. You can also visit our website at aspidaconsulting.com. I do also have a podcast that I do called Career Talk with OG. We even dropped some episodes there in Spanish. But what I want to leave people here is that something that I truly believe, and that is that, folks, when we love our story and we embrace our journey, we are going to be kind to ourselves when we fail, and we're going to have the courage to celebrate our successes as well. And the key thing is, again, to embrace and own our story. All right. So I want to leave everyone with that.
Oscar, thank you so much again for spending this afternoon with us. We wish you the best, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.